From time to time, I like to bring to you news from the bizarre world of adventurous science, including things scientists are doing that may not be the best idea for a lot of reasons, as it relates to food and nutrition and other things that are pertinent to what we tend to talk about here in our little corner of YouTube. And some of you will immediately say, hey, this story sounds awesome. I'd love to try it. But there is a basic wisdom here, or a basic question I have to ask, and it really comes down to wisdom. Is there any wisdom trying to bring back an extinct species? And I don't mean something that was recently extinct and clearly went extinct because of man's interventions in the environment or overhunting by modern methods that would not have been a problem for our ancient ancestors. Because the ecosystem has kind of moved on since this creature here, the woolly mammoth. The ecosystem has moved on since this thing disappeared from the face of the earth. And I have to ask if it's really a good idea. Because what we have going on here, our scientists are going to try to bring it back from the dead. And now, when they say they're bringing it back from the dead, that's not actually true. What they're doing is bringing a hybrid version of it into existence. Because as it goes, scientists have found numerous woolly mammoths in the ice. They have found their skeletons all over the place. They're not exactly rare to find in the fossil record. And they sometimes find them with enough meat on them that they can get DNA. This leads to cloning. I've got some ethical questions about that, but really the basic question is this a good idea? Because they're going to take the DNA of the woolly mammoth, they're going to make a hybrid with that and the Asian elephant, bringing essentially a new creature into existence. I'm not sold on this. Obviously, this is being done not just to put these things in zoos. There's a company out there who wants to then cultivate this into meat, lab-grown meat, and that's completely where they lose me because I am against processed foods, including growing meat in a lab setting. Feel free to disagree with me if you like on that. I just prefer my food to come from nature. And this, to me, is not really any different than the lab-grown salmon, which has not been seen to be the safest stuff, or the lab-grown beef that our benevolent rulers, if you will, are openly talking about as an alternative to trying to get us to eat the bugs. If they can't get us to eat the bugs, maybe they can get us to eat cloned beef. Even though there are some studies now saying that stuff's not safe either. But they're trying to bring back the woolly mammoth. I don't know why, other than this is, of course, going to be, probably at first anyway, a luxury cut of meat when they do it. So our story comes from TechCrunch, which gives us this fantastic headline. Cultured meat firm resurrects woolly mammoth in lab-grown meatball. It's not fit for human consumption yet, though. Okay, whenever you see the word yet, something like relating to processed foods and the science of food, especially in the context of being fit for human consumption, it's never reassuring, at least not to me. This is Frankenscience. This is this kind of stuff we should all be opposed to. I'm not against necessarily bringing back the woolly mammoth into first controlled environments so it can wander in maybe the Arctic or wherever it would be most suited for, if an ethical argument for that could be made. And if the scientific community could very honestly tell us, that this won't be a catastrophe. I'm not convinced that that's a good idea either. These things have been gone for thousands of years from the landscape. And they were hunted to extinction by our ancestors because human beings got very good very quickly at bringing down the megafauna. We know this. This is not news to you if you've been in the carnivore space for any length of time. They want to bring these things back. They want to do it to make into lab-grown meat. I'm a little flabbergasted at this, just because this seems so arrogant that at the end of the day, somebody really needs to intervene with these guys and say, no. That's my thought, but let's see what they're up to here. So from the article, quote, "Truth, as the saying goes, is often stranger than fiction. The very notion of resurrecting the long-extinct woolly mammoth was the stuff of fantasy not that long ago, but scientists are already working on ways to achieve something close to that, using DNA from soft tissue in frozen mammoth remains and meshing it with that of a modern-day elephant. But while such quote-unquote de-extinction projects may or may not ultimately succeed, one company is already laying claim to having produced the first meat product made from mammoth DNA. Vow, an Australian cultivated food company that creates meat in a laboratory setting from animal cells, says that it has used advanced molecular engineering to resurrect the woolly mammoth in meatball form by combining original mammoth DNA with fragments of an African elephant's DNA. James Ryle, Vow's chief science officer, said that the company first identified the mammoth myoglobin, a protein that is key to giving meat its color and taste, and then used publicly available data to identify the DNA sequence in mammoths. We filled in any gaps in the DNA sequence of this mammoth myoglobin gene by using the genome of the African elephant, the mammoth's closest living relative. Editor's note, it's actually the Asian elephant that is the mammoth's closest living relative. Ryle said in a video announcing the mammoth meatball, we inserted the mammoth myoglobin gene into our cells using a very low current and high voltage charge. Then we continued to grow and multiply these cells just as would occur in a mammoth thousands of years ago. And the amazing thing about this is that not a single animal needed to die to produce the mammoth meatball. Quote. Okay, I just want to say that I hope that he actually got his elephant types here wrong as a mere slip of the tongue when he said that the African elephant was the closest living relative to the mammoth, because as the editors here say, it's actually the Asian elephant that is, which is why I said the Asian elephant at the beginning, because I'm hoping to give this guy the benefit of the doubt. Because if he got that wrong, then this isn't reassuring at all, because this is the kind of basic homework you do before you start cloning animals, if you're going to do that at all, and I don't endorse that. And it really begs a lot of questions. So I hope that there's a follow-up to the story that really tells us that, yeah, we got the basic science of this right before we start delving into much more complex science that will have much more real impacts on human beings and the environment, because we don't know what's going to happen if they bring in a real Franken hybrid of an animal. And really, this is going to be one of those Franken creatures anyway, simply because you can't bring back the mammoth without using some other animal's DNA, splicing it into its DNA sequence, and bringing in what is technically a new creature onto the face of the earth. You can't do it. It's not possible, at least not yet. Maybe someday it will be. Maybe someday the scientific world will figure out how to make an artificial ova that they can then implant the DNA into, and with the magic of modern science, grow in a lab tube that looks like something out of like those Star Wars prequels, some sort of clone of an elephant. Maybe they can do it. I'm skeptical on that, and I don't think this is a good idea. But would you eat this? I am against lab-cultivated meat across the board. Just full stop. But would you eat this? Would you try this? If you saw for a reasonable price at your local grocery store, woolly mammoth, maybe they'll call them Manny steaks. Have the, license the picture, the character from the Ice Age movies, and put it on there, on the package. Would you try it? Would you pay the money for it? I mean, it's a ruminant animal after all. Granted, this animal would not have done, this animal never existed, what they're selling you in the package, because it's lab-cultivated meat, so it never came from an animal, which means the ruminant process never happened. This thing never grazed because that animal didn't exist. It just grew a bunch of cells in a lab. But would you try it? I'm curious if you're braver than I am. I think I'll pass on this one. Let me know what you thought of this in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help, as does sharing this on social media. That helps a lot too. I'm Anthony Stine, the Practical Carnivore. Thanks for tuning in today.